They vanished into planning and quiet. And now everyone is asking the same raw question. Did she take them to protect them, or did she hide them to cover something darker? If you want justice for Lily and Jack, hit subscribe and turn on notifications now. Every view, every tip, every share keeps this story alive. Months before the disappearance, neighbors and friends say Malaya pulled back from life in small steps that, in hindsight, looked deliberate. She stopped going to coffee with the other parents, declined invitations, and let neighborhood small talk fade. Curtains were drawn more often. The kids were seen less in the yard. Simple visibility, the kind that makes a home part of a neighborhood, shrunk until the house looked like a place tried to blend into its own shadow. This kind of gradual withdrawal matters because it puts time and choice into the picture. It wasn't an overnight panic. It looks like preparation. People withdraw for many reasons: shame, fear, depression, or a need to protect a family from prying eyes. But when withdrawal is paired with quieter, very practical behaviors, like changing routines, hiding movements, or reducing digital traces, it begins to read differently. Several residents told reporters they noticed Malaya using different routes in her car, leaving at odd hours, and answering the door less frequently. That kind of behavior can indicate someone trying to limit exposure, to avoid being seen by certain people, or to avoid predictable patterns that others could track. For investigators, such behavior is a flag that someone may be planning to act out of public view. Withdrawal also erodes the social safety net that normally watches children. A child left to play under open skies is safer in a community where neighbors call out and check in. When a family steps back, the informal network of eyes and small interventions fades. In this case, those lost human checks, chance conversations, casual visits, the kind of neighborly "did you see the kids?" were no longer there to prompt earlier discovery or alarm. If Malaya had reasons for removing herself, those choices also removed the people most likely to notice something amiss early. The pattern of behavior matters because it speaks to intent and capability. Someone who withdraws over months has the time to research options, to test small plans, and to quietly secure the resources that make a sudden disappearance possible. That slow retreat takes place one small decision at a time, and each choice, fewer visitors, less visibility, lowers the chance that a neighbor will notice if or when a final step occurs. Alongside withdrawal, investigators say Malaya reduced her digital footprint in ways that look intentional. People reported that she stopped posting on social media, cut back communications to only a few contacts, and, critically, began using cash more frequently. Cash withdrawals and untraceable transactions remove the breadcrumbs police often follow: bank records, card statements, and location-linked purchases. A switch to cash is a practical way to minimize a transactional trail. The concern deepens with the report that she switched to an unregistered or burner phone for certain communications. A disposable phone is short-lived but can be effective for avoiding long-term metadata that investigators can subpoena: call logs, cell tower pings, and message histories. When someone purposefully breaks the chain of traceable communication, it suggests planning. It doesn't prove a crime, but it makes a disappearance easier to execute and harder to trace. Practical preparations like these also affect timelines. When investigators later request call records or bank statements and find gaps or cash withdrawals, they must rely on other sources: witness statements, surveillance cameras, and interviews. But if those sources were also considered in the planning, avoided streets, routes without cameras, and visits to areas where cell coverage is poor, finding consistent corroboration becomes much harder. In effect, small changes in daily behavior can be multiplied into significant investigative hurdles. At the heart of many accounts of the family's life were escalating conflicts at home. Observers say tensions between Malaya and her partner, Daniel, grew more frequent and more volatile. What began as ordinary arguments reportedly escalated into heated fights, sometimes loud enough for neighbors to hear through thin walls. In family dynamics, repeated conflict sets a tone. People grow guarded, routines break down, and stress accumulates. For parents, ongoing domestic strife can sharpen the sense of risk and change the calculus of what must be done to protect children or to hide things. Domestic volatility matters for several reasons. First, it increases the chance that one partner might act decisively to remove children from perceived danger, or to take them away in an attempt to control a fraught situation. Second, it can create an environment in which ordinary caregiving routines break down, and that can affect how quickly someone notices the absence of a child. Third, it means investigators must carefully parse statements. A volatile relationship can lead to inconsistent accounts, misremembered details, or statements given under stress. Importantly, conflict alone doesn't point to guilt. It does, however, provide context for decisions people later make under pressure. Neighbors reported distinct signs of a family that was retreating behind physical barriers. Curtains that had once been open now stayed shut. Doors were locked and answered with less warmth. The children were outside less often, and where once a parent might sit on the porch chatting, the house now gave the impression of people keeping to themselves. For a tight-knit community, those small signals are loud. They suggest an interior life that chose privacy over participation. Physical seclusion can serve a purpose. Families in trouble sometimes require space to manage complex needs without public judgment, but can also be a stage setter. By making the home less visible, the people inside lower the chances of an accidental witness to certain activities, someone leaving silently, packages being packed, or routine departures. When a home is visible and open to the neighborhood, ordinary patterns of life create natural oversight. When that oversight disappears, it creates both privacy and opportunity. These outward signs were paired with quieter, more deliberate preparations that sources say Malaya made as she studied routes away from surveillance and public view. She reportedly spent time learning backroads and avoiding highways and locations with cameras. That knowledge is practical and specific. Small rural backroads are often less covered by CCTV, have fewer houses with doorbell cameras, and provide multiple paths to move quietly. Knowledge of such routes increases the possibility of leaving an area without being captured on widely accessible cameras. It's crucial to recognize that learning backroads can be innocent. People do it for scenic drives or to avoid traffic. However, when combined with other behaviors, reduced digital presence, cash withdrawals, and changing routines, it forms a pattern consistent with deliberate planning. Investigators treat such a pattern seriously because it suggests premeditation rather than a spur-of-the-moment decision. Distrust of institutions shaped much of Malaya's reported thinking. Accounts suggest she believed Child Protective Services and law enforcement could not, or would not, protect her children from perceived threats. That fear was more than political rhetoric. It appears to have become a felt reality, informing her decisions. Distrust in institutions is not uncommon, particularly among those who have experienced conflict with authorities or who believe systems are biased or incompetent. But when distrust becomes the lens through which a parent assesses risks, it can prompt radical choices that put family safety into private hands rather than public support networks. If a parent believes external systems endanger their children more than they help, they may feel justified in taking extreme measures to control outcomes. That rationale is central to debate about parental responsibility and the role of social services. From an investigative viewpoint, the belief that reporting will elicit harm changes behavior. Fewer calls to police, fewer requests for formal help, and more secretive planning. For social agencies, rebuilding trust in such contexts is essential but difficult. Investigators now say the disappearance appeared carefully planned, at least in practical terms. Supplies were packed: water, warm clothing, and provisions, suggesting an intention to stay off-grid for a time. Packing survival items indicates that leaving was not a hasty flight, but a calculated move. Even a brief plan to stay remote requires foresight. Survival supplies point to a willingness to accept rough conditions and to forego normal comforts, again reducing the likelihood of being found quickly. Where might people go if they intended to stay out of reach? Possible hideouts include relatives living in remote regions, off-grid communities that prioritize anonymity, or adopting false identities in places with weak local enforcement. Each option has logistical demands: food, shelter, and either existing relationships or the ability to create convincing new personas. Relocating to remote relatives can be easier if family loyalties are strong and if those relatives are willing to harbor children. Off-grid communities can provide social cover, but also require adaptation to different norms and scarcity. Establishing a fake identity is the most complex option. It demands documentation or the ability to avoid it entirely in informal living situations. Public reaction to these possibilities split quickly. Some saw Malaya as a mother who had decided that the only way to protect her children was to remove them from danger and trust no one else. Others saw a more troubling prospect: a parent hiding children to conceal wrongdoing. These binary reactions are human but misleading. Real life often sits in the gray. A parent who fears for safety might make an ethically fraught choice, and a parent who hides children might either be protecting them or shielding abuse. For investigators, the question is not motive alone, but verifiable fact. Where are the children? Who has last seen them? And what can physical and digital evidence tell us? Authorities have urged anyone with information to come forward. That call is practical and urgent. Even if Malaya believed she acted in her children's best interests, the law and the children's welfare require answers. The path to finding them is often incremental: a dashcam clip, a small GPS ping, a discarded piece of clothing. Each tiny lead can reconnect threads in a timeline that otherwise looks deliberately obscured. From these developments, we can draw clear takeaways. Gradual isolation often signals deeper decisions, whether protective or secretive. Small, deliberate actions, cutting digital trails, studying isolated routes, packing supplies, tend to indicate preparation and reduce the odds that a disappearance is accidental. Public narratives will split. Some will defend Malaya as a mother making hard choices. Others will suspect concealment. Those narratives, when amplified online, can hinder investigations by spreading unverified claims and creating noise that wastes resources. And finally, without fresh, verifiable information, these scenarios remain speculative. The truth depends on evidence, not inference. This case is full of uneasy possibilities. People act under stress, fear, and the conviction that they are making the only choice left. That does not excuse harmful acts, but it complicates judgment. For neighbors, for investigators, and for the public, the work now is practical. Check footage, revisit witnesses, follow the financial trail, and pursue any tip, no matter how small. If you know where Malaya or the children might be, call the authorities. If you have dashcam footage from back roads near the area from the months before the disappearance, check it again. We'll keep watching, reporting, and sharing verified updates. For Lily and Jack, attention matters. It makes it harder for truth to hide. If you believe in this search, click like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll be alerted when new information surfaces. Keep sharing credible tips and encourage anyone who might know to speak to investigators. Together, practical persistence and public pressure give these children the best chance of being found.